I still remember the exact moment everything shattered. Standing in the lobby of Northwestern Memorial Hospital at 2:47 a.m., fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like dying insects, my phone vibrating against my chest with a message that would destroy everything I thought I knew about my sister. The text was from Maya's number, but Maya was supposed to be dead, had been dead for 3 days. I'd identified her body myself, signed the papers, picked out a goddamn coffin. The funeral was scheduled for tomorrow morning at Graceland Cemetery, and I'd spent the last 72 hours in a grief-induced haze, making arrangements, accepting condolences, trying to figure out how to live without my twin sister. Danny. It wasn't me. I'm alive. Don't trust anyone at the hospital. My legs nearly buckled. The hospital lobby spun around me like I was drunk, but I hadn't touched a drop. Just spent 3 sleepless nights replaying the phone call from the Chicago PD, the drive to the morgue, the moment they pulled back that white sheet, and I saw Maya's face. Peaceful and cold. Except it wasn't Maya's face. I realize that now, standing in this sterile lobby with my world collapsing around me. The woman on that metal table looked like Maya, had Maya's hair, Maya's build, even the small scar above her left eyebrow from when we were kids. But something had been wrong. Something I couldn't put my finger on at the time, dismissed as the shock of seeing my sister dead. I looked around quick, scanning for security cameras for anyone watching. The overnight staff barely glanced up from their stations. Just another family member dealing with tragedy in the middle of the night, probably coming to collect personal effects or sign more paperwork. My fingers trembled as I typed back. What the hell is going on? The response came instantly. Meet me tomorrow. Millennium Park, Bean noon. Come alone. And Danny, whatever you do, don't tell Rebecca. Rebecca, my wife of 4 years, the woman who'd held me while I cried, who'd helped me pick out flowers for Maya's funeral, who'd been nothing but supportive through the worst 3 days of my life. The woman who'd taken time off work to help me navigate insurance claims and funeral arrangements, who'd made sure I ate something even when food tasted like cardboard. But now that name felt different. Suspicious. Why specifically mention Rebecca? Maya had always liked my wife, gotten along well with her at family gatherings and holidays. There'd never been tension between them, never any reason for Maya to single her out as someone not to trust. I drove home in silence, mind racing through possibilities, each one more insane than the last. Maybe Maya had been in some kind of accident, lost her memory, been taken to a different hospital. Maybe there'd been a mix-up with the body, some bureaucratic nightmare that had led to it identifying the wrong person. Maybe she'd been kidnapped, held somewhere, just escaped. But none of that explained the deliberate phrasing of her message. Don't trust anyone at the hospital, not there's been a mistake, or I need help. The implication was clear. Someone at Northwestern Memorial was involved in whatever had happened to her. Rebecca was asleep when I slipped into bed, curled up on her side like nothing in the world had changed. I lay there staring at the ceiling until sunrise, every nerve in my body screaming. The woman beside me breathed steadily, occasionally murmuring in her sleep, and I found myself studying her face in the dim light filtering through our bedroom curtains. She looked exactly like the woman I'd married. Same dark hair, same small nose, same beauty mark on her left cheek. But Maya's words echoed in my head. Don't trust Rebecca. Why would my dead sister specifically warn me against my own wife? The next morning, Rebecca made coffee like always. 2 cups, cream in hers, black in mine, exactly the way we'd done it every morning for 4 years. She kissed me goodbye like always. That soft brush of lips against my cheek that used to make me smile. Asked if I needed anything from the store, if I wanted her to cancel her afternoon meeting to stay home with me. Her voice was soft, caring, exactly what you'd expect from a grieving spouse trying to help her husband through the loss of his twin sister. But now everything felt wrong. The way she touched my shoulder, the way her eyes lingered on my phone when I checked it, the way she asked, almost too casually, if I was planning to go anywhere today. Just need some air, I told her. Maybe a walk around the neighborhood. She nodded, understanding. Take your time. Grief doesn't have a schedule. Call me if you need anything, okay? I waited until her car disappeared around the corner, then grabbed my keys and headed for downtown. The drive to Millennium Park gave me time to think, to try to process what Maya might have gotten herself involved in. My sister had always been the more adventurous one, the risk taker, the one who dove headfirst into situations that made me nervous. After our military service, she'd worked as a freelance investigative journalist, the kind who dug into corporate corruption and government scandals. I'd worried about some of her assignments, the powerful people she was investigating, but Maya had always laughed off my concerns. Someone has to ask the hard questions, Danny, she'd say. Might as well be me. Maybe she'd finally asked the wrong question to the wrong person. I drove to Millennium Park an hour early, parked 3 blocks away, and walked. The Bean reflected the Chicago skyline in its warped surface, tourists taking selfies, kids running around its base, street performers entertaining small crowds. Normal life continuing while mine fell apart. At exactly noon, I saw her. Maya stood near the south entrance, wearing a baseball cap pulled low, sunglasses covering half her face. She looked thinner than I remembered, more angular, with a tension in her posture that spoke of sleepless nights and constant vigilance. But unmistakably alive. Unmistakably my sister. I approached slowly, afraid she might disappear if I moved too fast, like she was some kind of mirage brought on by grief and desperation. Jesus Christ, Maya. She didn't smile, just grabbed my arm and steered me toward a quieter section of the park, away from the crowds and noise. Her grip was strong, urgent, and I could feel the slight tremor in her hands. We can't stay long. They're tracking your phone. Who's tracking my phone? Sit down, Danny. This is going to be hard to hear. We found a bench overlooking the lake, tourists and joggers passing by without giving us a second glance. Maya pulled out a small device, some kind of signal jammer, and placed it between us. The woman you married isn't who you think she is. Her real name is Sarah Chen, and she works for a company called Meridian Solutions. They're a private intelligence contractor with ties to the Pentagon and several three-letter agencies. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline, for some indication that this was an elaborate joke. Rebecca's a graphic designer. She works for that boutique firm in River North, does logos and websites for small businesses. Rebecca Martinez died in a car accident in Phoenix 4 years ago, 3 months before you met Rebecca at that coffee shop in Lincoln Park. Sarah Chen assumed her identity, built a whole life around getting close to you. The world tilted. I remembered that day clearly, the way Rebecca had spilled coffee on my laptop, her embarrassed apology, the way she'd insisted on buying me a replacement drink. It had felt like fate, like one of those meet-cute stories you see in romantic comedies. That's insane. Why would anyone go to such elaborate lengths to... Because of what we stumbled onto in Afghanistan. Maya and I had both served different units, different deployment times, but we'd overlapped for 6 months at Bagram Airfield. It felt like a lifetime ago, those dusty days and cold nights, the constant tension of knowing that danger could come from anywhere at any time. What about Afghanistan? Maya pulled out a tablet, swiped to a photo that made my stomach drop. It was us, younger, in uniform, standing next to a man in civilian clothes I recognized but couldn't immediately place. Behind us was a nondescript building, the kind of prefabricated structure that dotted every military base. Remember Colonel Harrison, the guy who ran those psychological evaluations during our last month there? I nodded slowly. Harrison had been a thin, intense man with wire-rimmed glasses and a habit of taking notes while you talked. He'd interviewed every soldier individually, some kind of experimental PTSD prevention program funded by a military research grant. Maya and I had both participated, along with dozens of other personnel. Those weren't evaluations, Danny. They were experiments. Project Mindbridge. They were testing advanced psychological manipulation techniques on active duty personnel, trying to develop new methods of behavioral control. That's, I started, then stopped, because suddenly things were clicking into place. Memories I'd dismissed as stress-induced oddities, strange dreams, moments of disorientation that I'd attributed to the chaos of deployment. We were part of a twin study, Maya continued, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Identical genetics, shared combat exposure, strong emotional bonds. Perfect test subjects for something called remote psychological influence. You're saying they brainwashed us? I'm saying they tried to, but something went wrong with the conditioning. Instead of making us more compliant, more susceptible to external control, it created this connection between us. We started picking up on each other's thoughts, emotions, even physical sensations sometimes. I remembered those moments. Times when I'd wake up in a cold sweat because Maya was having a nightmare 3 states away. Times when I'd call her just as she was reaching for the phone to call me. Instances where I'd feel an inexplicable urge to check on her, only to discover she was in some kind of trouble or distress. I'd always attributed it to twin intuition, that mysterious bond that identical siblings were supposed to share. But Maya was talking about something more deliberate, more sinister. They've been monitoring us ever since we got back stateside. Meridian Solutions has been tracking our medical records, employment history, relationships, financial transactions. When you got serious with Rebecca, with Sarah, they saw an opportunity. To do what? Maya's jaw tightened, and I could see the exhaustion in her eyes, the weight of whatever she'd been carrying alone for who knew how long. To complete the experiment, turn us against each other, see if they could break the psychological bond, manipulate it, use it as a weapon against foreign targets who might have similar connections. I felt sick. The accident wasn't an accident. They tried to kill me because I found something. Files from Bagram, financial records, documentation of a whole network of test subjects. Most of them are dead now, Danny. Car accidents, drug overdoses, apparent suicides, anyone who showed signs of the psychological linking they were trying to create. She pulled up another photo on the tablet. A document with Meridian Solutions letterhead, official-looking seals and signatures. This is a termination order, for both of us. Sarah was supposed to drug you tonight, make it look like a murder-suicide. Grieving husband, overwhelmed by the loss of his twin sister, kills himself after a psychological breakdown. My hands were shaking now. The bench felt unsteady beneath me, like the whole world was shifting on its axis. How do you know all this? Because I've been investigating them for 2 years. Ever since I started having those dreams, the ones where I could feel what you were feeling, know things about your life that I shouldn't know. I knew something was wrong, so I started digging. She showed me more files. Photos of other twins, all military veterans, all dead under suspicious circumstances. Financial records showing payments to doctors, coroners, police officers, a web of corruption that stretched from military contractors to local officials. Sarah's handler is a man named Michael Torres, former CIA, now head of domestic operations for Meridian Solutions. He's the one who ordered the hit on me, the one who's been orchestrating your surveillance for the past 4 years. Where is he now? Chicago. Downtown office, 42nd floor of the Willis Tower. But Danny, we can't just walk in there and confront him. These people have resources, connections at every level of government. Plus, they'll kill us both if they know I'm alive. I stood up, pacing behind the bench, mind racing through implications and possibilities. So what's the plan? Maya hesitated, and I could see her weighing options, calculating risks. There isn't a clean plan. I mean, there is something we can try, but it's dangerous, probably suicidal. Tell me. I've been gathering evidence for 2 years. Documents, recordings, financial records, testimony from other survivors, everything I need to expose Project Mindbridge and bring down Meridian Solutions. But I need access to their internal servers to upload it where it can't be deleted or buried. And how do we do that? Sarah has access codes. She logs in remotely every night at 11 p.m. to file her daily reports on your activities. If we can get her laptop without her knowing, get her to input her credentials. I thought about Rebecca, Sarah, at home, probably making dinner, playing the role of the grieving wife. The woman I'd shared a bed with for 4 years, who knew every one of my fears and secrets, who'd been documenting my every move for a shadowy government contractor. She's gonna know something's wrong. I've been acting strange since last night, asking weird questions, being paranoid about my phone. Then we don't have much time. Maybe 12 hours before they decide to accelerate the timeline and eliminate both of us. Maya packed up the tablet and signal jammer. Tonight, I'll be watching the house from across the street, parked in that blue Honda you've probably seen around the neighborhood for the past week. I remembered the car. Had noticed it because it was older, out of place among the newer vehicles our neighbors typically drove. When she opens the laptop at 11, create a distraction. Spill something on her, start an argument, fake a panic attack, anything that will get her away from the keyboard for 60 seconds. That's all I need. And then what? Then we run. Once I upload the files to our dead drop servers, they'll know I'm alive and that we have everything. The gloves come off at that point. I drove home in a daze, Maya's words echoing in my head. The familiar streets of my neighborhood looked different now, threatening. I found myself checking the rearview mirror, noting which cars had been behind me for more than a few turns. Sarah was in the kitchen when I walked in, wearing the blue sundress I'd bought her last Christmas, hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked up with that same concerned smile that had comforted me through 3 days of grief. How was your walk? Good. Needed that fresh air, time to think. She moved closer, wrapped her arms around my waist in a gesture that had once felt natural and loving. Now it felt like a cage, like she was checking for concealed weapons or recording devices. I made your favorite. Chicken parmesan with that pasta sauce you like. Thought you might be hungry. Her touch felt wrong now. Cold. Calculated. But I forced myself to lean into it, to play the role of the grieving husband. Thanks, babe. You're amazing. Don't know what I'd do without you. The words tasted like ash in my mouth. The evening crawled by like a slow-motion nightmare. We watched Netflix, ordered takeout Thai food when neither of us felt like cooking, acted like a normal married couple dealing with grief and loss. Sarah was perfect in her role. Supportive, but not pushy. Affectionate, but respectful of my need for space. But I found myself studying her, looking for cracks in the performance. The way she held her phone, thumb hovering over the screen like she was waiting for an important message. The way her eyes would dart to the windows when a car passed by outside. Small tells that I'd never noticed before or had dismissed as normal behavior. At 10:45 p.m., she excused herself to check work emails. Just need to send a quick update to my client about their logo redesign. The restaurant chain I told you about, they want to revise the color scheme again. I'd heard this story before, the demanding restaurant client who kept changing their mind about branding elements. It had seemed plausible at the time, the kind of small frustration that came with freelance work. She opened her laptop at the kitchen table, exactly as Maya had predicted. I could see her fingers moving over the keyboard, typing what looked like a detailed report, much longer and more formal than a simple client update. At 11:02, I walked over with 2 glasses of wine. Thought you might want some, I said, deliberately stumbling and spilling red wine across the keyboard and screen. Shit! Danny! What? Sarah jumped up, grabbing paper towels, her calm facade cracking for the first time. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I grabbed more paper towels from the counter, making a bigger mess, knocking over her coffee mug for good measure. I don't know what's wrong with me today. Sarah was frantically trying to save her laptop, dabbing at the keys with paper towels. She was so focused on damage control that she didn't notice the back door open quietly, didn't see Maya slip inside, and move silently toward the table. I watched from my peripheral vision as Maya inserted a USB drive into the port, her fingers flying over the keys. The laptop was still logged into whatever system Sarah had been using, the wine spill having interrupted her session, but not closed it. 58 seconds. Maya extracted the drive and vanished back through the door, moving like a ghost. It's okay, Sarah said finally, though her voice was tighter now, more strained. I think I caught it in time. I'll finish this upstairs on my backup laptop. Again, I'm really sorry. I don't know where my head is. She kissed my forehead, but the gesture felt mechanical now. It's fine. You're grieving. These things happen. Accidents. But I caught something in her eyes as she said the word accidents. Suspicion. She was starting to wonder if the spill was really unintentional. I went to bed early, pretending to be exhausted from the emotional toll of the day. Sarah stayed downstairs for another hour, and I could hear her making phone calls. Quiet, urgent conversations in what sounded like a different language, though I couldn't be sure from upstairs. At 3 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It's done. Files are uploaded to 17 different servers across 6 countries. Meet me at the old warehouse on Ashland, the one we used to sneak into in high school. You remember the place. Come now, and Danny, bring your passport. I knew the warehouse. Maya and I used to break in there as teenagers, climb to the roof through a broken skylight, smoke stolen cigarettes, and talk about escaping Chicago someday. It was in an industrial area that had been mostly abandoned since the economic downturn, surrounded by empty lots and shuttered factories. I slipped out of bed, grabbed my keys and the go bag I'd packed earlier, and drove through empty streets to the warehouse district. The building looked exactly the same. Broken windows, graffiti-covered walls, chain-link fence that still had the same hole we'd cut with bolt cutters 20 years ago. Maya was waiting on the 3rd floor, laptop open, surrounded by printouts and photographs that covered every surface like some kind of conspiracy theory map. How bad is it? I asked. Worse than I thought. Project Mindbridge was just the beginning. They've been running psychological experiments on veterans for 15 years, refining their techniques, expanding their target profiles. Thousands of subjects, most of them dead now. She showed me a spreadsheet that made my stomach turn. Names, dates, causes of death. The pattern was unmistakable once you knew what to look for. Car accidents, drug overdoses, apparent suicides, medical emergencies. Anyone who showed signs of developing psychic abilities or enhanced intuition was systematically eliminated. Why keep us alive this long? Because we were the success story. The psychological bond between us was stronger than anything they'd achieved before. They wanted to study it, understand it, figure out how to replicate it in other subjects. I scrolled through more files on her laptop, photos of brain scans, medical reports, psychological evaluations dating back to our deployment. There were videos, too, security footage from what looked like medical facilities, showing people who might have been us undergoing various procedures. Jesus, Maya, they've been watching us for years, recording everything. There's more. She pulled up a video file dated just last month. This is from a Meridian Solutions briefing, Taurus explaining the current phase of the operation. The video showed a conference room with several people in suits sitting around a polished table. Taurus was at the head, a thin man with silver hair and cold eyes, pointing to a presentation screen that showed photos of Maya and me. Subject Daniel Walker remains unaware of conditioning protocols. Asset Sarah Chen maintains close contact, thus continues gathering comprehensive behavioral data. Psychological profile suggests subject is approaching optimal vulnerability threshold. Recommend proceeding to phase 3 within 30 days. Phase 3? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Maya paused the video. Termination. But first, they wanted to see if they could turn us against each other, force a psychotic break, make me seem dangerous and unstable to you. The car accident was supposed to be the trigger, make you think I was dead, let you grieve, then have me reappear seeming paranoid and unhinged. Sarah would convince you that I was suffering from PTSD-induced delusions, that I was dangerous to myself and others. You'd help them have me committed or eliminated, believing you were protecting me from my own damaged mind. I felt sick, remembering my initial reaction to Maya's text message. Part of me had wondered if she was having some kind of breakdown, if the stress of whatever investigation she'd been working on had finally gotten to her. But you figured it out first. Not soon enough. Danny, Sarah knows you're gone by now. I've been monitoring their communications through a backdoor I installed when I uploaded the files. They're mobilizing a cleanup team. As if on cue, my phone rang. Sarah's number. Answer it, Maya whispered. Act normal, but keep her talking. I need to trace the call. I picked up, trying to keep my voice steady. Hey, babe. Danny, where are you? Her voice was different now, sharper, more controlled. The mask of the concerned wife was slipping. Couldn't sleep. Went for a drive to clear my head. You need to come home, right now. There are some people here who want to talk to you about Maya. My blood ran cold. What people? FBI agents. They have questions about Maya's activities before her death. Apparently, she was involved in some kind of illegal hacking operation. Maya was shaking her head vigorously, pointing to her laptop screen. She'd pulled up some kind of tracking software that showed red dots converging on our location from multiple directions. I'll be right there, I told Sarah, hanging up. They're not FBI, Maya said, fingers flying over her keyboard. Meridian cleanup crew. Military contractors with government credentials, and they're already here. I looked out the grimy window. 3 black SUVs were pulling up to the warehouse, men in tactical gear spilling out like some kind of SWAT team. Back exit? I asked. Blocked. They've got the whole building surrounded. Maya was frantically packing her laptop, shoving files into a waterproof backpack. There's only one way out of this. What? The roof. Remember the old fire escape that leads to the apartment building next door? The gap is maybe 8 feet. We used to dare each other to jump it when we were kids. Footsteps echoed from the stairwell below. Heavy boots, moving fast and coordinated. Professional. Now, Maya hissed. We ran for the fire escape, old metal groaning under our weight as we climbed toward the roof. Behind us, the warehouse filled with shouts and the beam of high-powered flashlights cutting through darkness. The gap between buildings looked wider than I remembered, more dangerous. 4 stories up, with concrete and broken glass waiting below. Maya went first, taking a running leap and landing hard on the adjacent roof. I followed, feeling my ankle twist as I hit the gravel surface. Move, Maya said, pulling me toward another fire escape. We've got maybe 2 minutes before they figure out where we went. We made it down 3 flights before the shooting started. Not wild spray, but controlled 3-round bursts. Professional marksmen trying to disable rather than kill, at least initially. Car, Maya gasped, pointing to an alley where she'd parked the blue Honda I'd seen around my neighborhood. We ran through shadows, ignoring the pain in my ankle, ignoring the sounds of pursuit behind us. Maya started the engine as I dove into the passenger's seat. Where are we going? Safe house. Friend of mine from the army. Someone who knows about Mindbridge and has been helping me prepare for this. I thought about my house, my job, my entire life in Chicago. Maya, once we do this, there's no going back. Everything I built, everyone I know. It was never real anyway, Danny. Your marriage, your house, probably half the people in your life. They've been managing your environment for years. She drove fast but careful, avoiding major highways, sticking to surface streets and residential areas where cameras were less common. We ended up at a small house in Little Village, a modest bungalow that looked like every other house on the block. Maria Gonzalez, Maya said as we walked up the front steps. We served together in Kandahar. She was part of a different Mindbridge experiment, one focused on enhanced combat awareness. Maria opened the door before we knocked, as if she'd been watching through the peephole. She was about our age, compact and tough-looking, with scars on her hands and tired eyes that had seen too much. About time you two showed up, she said. Get inside. They've been running surveillance drones over this neighborhood for the past 3 hours. The house looked normal from the outside, but the interior had been modified extensively. Reinforced walls, multiple computer monitors, radio equipment, and what looked like a small armory mounted behind glass cases. How long have you been preparing for this? I asked. 2 years, Maria said, leading us to a basement that had been converted into some kind of command center. Ever since Maya contacted me about the twin studies. We're not the only survivors, Danny. There are maybe a dozen of us left from various Mindbridge experiments. She pulled up a digital map on one of the monitors. Red dots scattered across the Midwest, each one labeled with a name and status. Most of the test subjects are dead, but a few of us figured out what was happening before they could eliminate us. We've been building a network, gathering evidence, waiting for the right moment to strike back. What about the files Maya uploaded? Already spreading across the dark web. WikiLeaks has them, so do journalists at the Washington Post, New York Times, and Guardian. By morning, this story will be everywhere. Maya sat down heavily in a chair, looking more exhausted than I'd ever seen her. But they'll try to spin it, call us terrorists, Russian assets, conspiracy theorists, whatever it takes to discredit the evidence. Not if we have corroborating proof, Maria said. She pulled out a tablet, showed us a video file. This is Taurus, recorded 3 days ago, giving specific orders for your elimination. The video was crystal clear, obviously shot from a hidden camera in Taurus's office. He was speaking to someone off camera about cleaning up the Walker situation and making the deaths look accidental. How did you get this? Maria smiled grimly. One of their own people. Turns out Meridian has been experimenting on their employees too, using subliminal conditioning to create perfect assets who don't question orders. But the psychological programming doesn't always take. Sometimes people break free and develop a conscience. Sarah? No, she's a true believer. recruited young, trained extensively, completely bought into their mission. But her technical support officer, the guy who monitors all communications and data transfers, he started having doubts about 6 months ago. Started recording everything as insurance. I felt something like hope for the first time in days. So we can prove it. We can expose it, Maria corrected. Whether anyone believes it, whether anything changes, that's another matter entirely. Over the next 6 hours, we worked on compiling a comprehensive evidence package. Video testimony from other survivors, financial records showing payments to corrupt officials, medical documents proving the experiments had taken place, communications between Meridian operatives discussing specific operations. By dawn, the story was breaking on every major news network. Secret government mind control experiments, veterans used as human guinea pigs. Private contractors run illegal psychological tests on military personnel. But there was immediate pushback, government officials denying everything, claiming the documents were fabricated. Meridian Solutions issuing statements about coordinated disinformation campaigns and foreign interference in domestic affairs. Questions about the authenticity of the evidence, suggestions that the whistleblowers were unstable or had been compromised by enemy agents. They're going to fight this hard, Maya said, watching the news coverage on multiple screens. Let them, Maria replied. We have more evidence than they think, and more people willing to testify than they know about. My phone had been buzzing nonstop since sunrise. Sarah calling, texting, leaving voicemails that grew progressively more desperate and then more threatening. Danny, please call me back. I can explain everything. It's not what you think. The FBI wants to help you. Maya is dangerous, suffering from combat-induced psychosis. She's not thinking clearly. I love you. Whatever you think you know, it's not the whole truth. There are national security issues at stake. You're making a terrible mistake. Come home and we can work this out. This is your last chance. You're interfering with a classified operation. I finally answered on the 20th call around noon. Danny, thank God. Where are you? Somewhere safe from you and your handlers. You don't understand. Maya is sick. The experiments, they damaged her brain permanently. She's having paranoid delusions, creating elaborate conspiracy theories to explain her own psychological breakdown. Nice try, Sarah. Or should I call you Agent Chen? Silence on the other end. When she spoke again, her voice was completely different, colder, more professional, stripped of any pretense of affection. Daniel Walker, you are interfering with a classified national security operation. Return to your residence immediately and surrender yourself for debriefing, or face the consequences. Go to hell. I hung up and turned off the phone, removing the battery for good measure. She's not going to give up, Maya said. None of them are. This is their life's work, their entire reason for existing. Then we make sure their life's work becomes their downfall. Over the following weeks, more evidence emerged from sources we'd never expected. Other test subjects came forward, despite the obvious risks to their safety. Whistleblowers from inside Meridian Solutions leaked additional documents. Family members of dead subjects started asking questions, demanding investigations into deaths that had seemed random at the time. Maya and I stayed underground, moving between safe houses, coordinating with investigative journalists and human rights lawyers. It was dangerous. We'd been declared persons of interest in a terrorism investigation, but we had allies now, people who understood what we were fighting against. The breakthrough came when Torres himself was arrested, not for the mind control experiments, but for tax evasion and money laundering. White-collar crimes that were easier to prosecute than psychological warfare against American citizens. Once in federal custody, faced with life in prison for financial crimes, he started talking, trying to cut deals, offering information in exchange for reduced sentences. The full scope of Project Mindbridge was even worse than we'd imagined. Hundreds of subjects over 15 years, drawn not just from military ranks, but from prisons, mental health facilities, even volunteers who thought they were participating in legitimate medical research. The ultimate goal was to create a new class of intelligence asset, operatives who could be psychologically controlled from a distance, who would follow orders without question, who could be activated like sleeper agents and then have their memories wiped afterward. Maya and I had been success stories in the worst possible way. The psychological link between us had grown stronger than they'd expected, making us potentially valuable as a team, but also unpredictably dangerous as individuals. They were going to use us as a proof of concept, Maya explained during our first public interview, conducted via encrypted video link from an undisclosed location. Train us to work together telepathically, then deploy us against high-value targets. The interviewer, a veteran journalist from the Washington Post, looked skeptical even as he asked the obvious question. You're claiming you and your brother can read each other's minds? Maya and I had debated how much to reveal about the actual effects of the experiments, how much the public would believe without dismissing us as delusional. Not read minds exactly, I said carefully, but we sometimes know things about each other that we shouldn't. Emotional states, physical sensations, even dreams sometimes. It's not reliable enough to be truly useful, but it's definitely beyond normal twin intuition. Can you demonstrate this claim? Maya stood up and walked into another room, out of sight of the video camera. I closed my eyes, tried to concentrate on that strange connection we'd never fully understood. She's thinking about our childhood dog, Max. Yellow lab mix, had a white patch on his left ear. She's remembering the day we found him at the animal shelter, how he wouldn't stop licking our faces. The interviewer spoke to someone off camera, presumably confirming with Maya. That's remarkably accurate, but couldn't this be some kind of elaborate trick, prearranged signals, or shared memories that you've rehearsed? Maybe, I admitted. But would you fake your own death for a parlor trick? Would you go into hiding for 2 years, give up everything you've built in life just to pull an elaborate hoax on national television? The interview aired on 60 Minutes 2 months later. Public opinion began to shift as more evidence emerged and more victims came forward. The story was too big, too well documented, involving too many credible sources to be dismissed as conspiracy theory nonsense. Meridian Solutions was dissolved amid the scandal. Several executives were indicted on various charges, though most plea bargained their way to minimal sentences in minimum security prisons. The government launched a formal investigation into Project Mindbridge and similar programs, promising full transparency and accountability. But we knew better than to trust government promises. Sarah, I still couldn't think of her as Agent Chen, disappeared during the first week of congressional hearings. Probably given a new identity, relocated somewhere safe with a generous pension and a clean record. I never saw her again, never got answers to the questions that still kept me awake at night. Had any of it been real? The woman I'd fallen in love with, married, shared 4 years of my life with, had there been any genuine feeling there, or was it all just another layer of the operation? Did she ever wonder what might have happened if we'd met under different circumstances, as different people? The divorce papers arrived via courier 3 months after she vanished. I signed them without reading the details. She could have the house, the car, every piece of furniture we'd bought together, every shared memory that now felt contaminated. But she couldn't have my name, couldn't keep pretending to be someone she wasn't. Maya and I eventually testified before Congress, sharing our story with the world in a series of hearings that were broadcast live on C-SPAN and watched by millions of Americans. What do you want people to understand about what happened to you? Asked the committee chair, a senator from Ohio who'd been pushing for military accountability reforms for years. I looked at Maya sitting beside me at the witness table and felt that familiar connection. Not psychic powers or mind reading, just the unbreakable bond that had always existed between us, now impossible to ignore or deny. That the human mind isn't meant to be weaponized, I said, speaking directly into the cameras. That there are some lines that should never be crossed, no matter what the justification, no matter how noble the stated goals. And what message do you have for other veterans who might be dealing with similar situations, who might suspect they were subjected to unauthorized experimentation? Maya leaned toward the microphone. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, if your memories don't add up, if you're experiencing symptoms that don't match any official diagnosis, start asking questions. Document everything. And know that you're not alone. There are people fighting for the truth, even when it seems impossible. The legislation that emerged from the hearings, the Veterans Protection and Medical Ethics Act, banned psychological experimentation on military personnel without explicit informed consent and created independent oversight mechanisms for all defense contractors working on human subjects research. It was a victory, but it felt hollow. Too many people were already dead. Too many lives had been destroyed. Too many families torn apart by secrets and lies. And somewhere in the shadows, other programs were probably still running. More careful now, better hidden, learning from Meridian's mistakes. The money helped, though. The class action lawsuit against Meridian Solutions and its parent companies resulted in a settlement of $400 million, distributed among surviving test subjects and the families of those who died. It wasn't justice, but it was acknowledgement, official recognition that crimes had been committed. 2 years after the congressional hearings, Maya and I had both started rebuilding our lives from scratch. She moved to a small town in Oregon, bought a bookstore from a retiring couple, tried to find peace in quiet routines and normal human interactions. I stayed in Chicago, couldn't bring myself to leave the city despite everything that had happened here. Started a nonprofit organization called the Walker Foundation, helping veterans navigate the VA system and connect with mental health resources that weren't connected to government research programs. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it felt real in a way that my marriage never had. Every day I knew that the work I was doing mattered, that the people I was helping were genuine, that the relationships I was building were based on truth rather than manipulation. We still talked regularly, that connection between us, stronger than ever. Sometimes Maya would call just as I was thinking about her. Sometimes I'd wake up from a nightmare only to discover she'd been having the same dream 3 time zones away. Sometimes we'd both get the same song stuck in our heads, or crave the same specific food, or feel compelled to visit the same childhood memory location. The doctors couldn't explain it, even the specialists who'd studied our case extensively. The psychological tests showed normal brain function, no signs of artificial enhancement or technological tampering. Whatever Project Mindbridge had done to us, it was beyond current medical understanding, integrated so deeply into our neural pathways that it might as well have been natural. But we'd learned to live with it, more than that. We'd learned to see it as a gift rather than a curse. After everything we'd been through, the bond between us felt like the one thing they couldn't take away, the one piece of ourselves that remained untouched by their experiments. Late at night, when the nonprofit office was empty and the city was quiet, I'd sometimes wonder about the other test subjects, the ones who hadn't been as lucky as Maya and me. I'd think about the families who still didn't know the truth about their loved ones' deaths, who were still living with the official stories about accidents and suicides and natural causes. I'd wonder about Sarah, whether she ever thought about our 4 years together, whether any part of her had been real beneath all the layers of training and conditioning. Did she miss the life we'd built, even if it had been built on lies? Did she ever wonder what might have happened if we'd met as different people in a different world? I'd wonder about Torres, serving 15 years in federal prison, probably writing memoirs that would never see publication, surrounded by other white-collar criminals who couldn't understand what he'd really been involved in. But mostly, I'd think about Maya, safe in Oregon, rebuilding her life one day at a time, one genuine human interaction after another. And I'd send her a text, something simple and real. Thinking about you. Hope the bookstore is keeping you busy. And she'd always text back within minutes, that twin connection working perfectly across 3 time zones. I know you are. Just helped a little girl pick out her first chapter book. Made me think of us at that age. What book? Charlotte's Web. Remember how we both cried when Charlotte died? Every time. Some things never change. The good things don't. Love you, brother. Love you too. The truth was out there now, documented and preserved and impossible to cover up completely. Dozens of journalists had investigated the story from every angle. Academics had written papers about the psychological techniques involved. Documentary filmmakers had spent years creating comprehensive records of what had happened. But the real victory wasn't in the media coverage or the congressional hearings or the prison sentences handed down to mid-level operatives. The real victory was that Maya and I had survived. We'd refused to let them break us, refused to let them turn us against each other, refused to become the weapons they tried to make us into. We'd chosen family over fear, truth over comfort, hope over despair. We'd learned that the most powerful bond isn't the artificial connection created by psychological manipulation, but the natural love between siblings who refuse to give up on each other. And in the end, that was enough. Not justice, maybe, but survival. Not revenge, but resilience. Not the life we'd planned, but a life worth living. The Chicago skyline looked different now when I drove past downtown, past the Willis Tower where Torres had once planned our deaths from his corner office. Different because I knew the truth about what had happened in those glass and steel monuments to corporate power, but also different because I was different. I was no longer the naive veteran who thought his biggest problem was finding a good job and a stable relationship. I was someone who'd looked behind the curtain of government secrecy and seen the machinery of control that operated in the shadows of democracy. But I was also someone who'd learned that even the most sophisticated psychological manipulation could be overcome by the simple human capacity to care about other people more than yourself. Someone who'd discovered that the most powerful resistance to tyranny wasn't violence or rebellion, but the quiet insistence on living authentically in a world built on lies. Maya called me on a Thursday evening in October, 3 years after everything had started with that text message in the hospital lobby. Danny, turn on the news. Channel 7. I grabbed the remote, flipped to the local station. A breaking news banner scrolled across the bottom of the screen. Federal investigation reveals additional government mind control programs. Jesus, I said. How many more are there? Apparently a lot more than we thought. The FBI raided 3 facilities today, 2 in Virginia and 1 in Colorado. They're saying this goes back decades, involves multiple agencies, thousands of subjects. I watched the footage of agents carrying boxes of documents out of nondescript office buildings, the same kind of bland corporate facades that had hidden Meridian solutions. Are we going to have to testify again? Maybe. But Danny, this time we won't be alone. There are hundreds of survivors coming forward, people from programs we never heard of. They want to form a coalition, coordinate our efforts. I'm in, I said without hesitation. I thought you would be. That night, I stayed up late reading about the new revelations, the expanding scope of what investigators were calling the largest domestic surveillance and experimentation program in American history. Part of me felt vindicated. We'd been right. There had been more to uncover, more victims to help. But mostly I felt tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of being defined by what had been done to us rather than who we chose to become. Tired of living in the shadow of other people's crimes. I walked to the window of my apartment, looked out at the lights of Chicago stretching to the horizon. Somewhere in those millions of lights were other people like Maya and me. People who'd been used and discarded by systems they'd trusted. People trying to rebuild their lives from fragments of truth and hope. Tomorrow, I'd go back to the Walker Foundation, help more veterans find resources and support. Next week, I'd probably testify before another congressional committee, add my voice to the growing chorus of survivors demanding accountability. Next month, I'd fly to Oregon to visit Maya, spend a few days helping her reorganize the bookstore and remembering what normal life felt like. But tonight, I was just Danny Walker, standing in his apartment in Chicago, grateful to be alive and free and connected to the one person in the world who truly understood what we'd survived together. My phone buzzed, a text from Maya, watching the same news. Ready for round two? Always, but this time, we're not fighting alone. No, this time, we're part of something bigger, the good kind of bigger, the best kind. Get some sleep, brother. Tomorrow, we change the world again. One truth at a time. One truth at a time. I turned off the lights and went to bed, knowing that Maya was doing the same thing 3 time zones away, both of us finally ready to rest because we knew we'd earned it. We'd survived the worst that powerful people could do to us, and we'd emerged stronger, more connected, more committed to protecting others from the same fate. The experiments were over. The real work was just beginning, and for the first time in years, that felt like enough.